This is a bonus episode of Decoding Fox News, and I'm your host, Juliette Jeske. Each week, I watch and analyze a whole heck of a lot of Fox News and then break it down. I watch all the Fox News you'd never want to. Now, why is this a bonus episode and not the weekly episode? Don't worry, the weekly episode is coming. It's just going to be a day late. The South Carolina primary was on a Saturday, which completely threw off my entire schedule. Since I do this every week, which meant I worked through the entire weekend again, go election year, and wanted to get this out first because it was pretty much finished. I just needed to polish it up a little bit. I wasn't planning on doing a podcast, but when I was looking at the clips, I turned it into a Twitter thread. It performed really well. People really liked it. And I thought, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do a podcast. And before we begin, I want to do a quick shout out to my sponsor because I don't like to interrupt this style of podcast. So very quickly, I have no large donor. I have no sponsors. I have no advertisers. This is 100% funded from listeners of this podcast and readers of my Substack. If you'd like to become a paid subscriber or paid supporter, you can go to my Substack at Decoding Fox News. Its subscriptions are $5 a month. You can go to my Patreon to become a paid subscriber or paid supporter there. All paid subscribers and paid supporters get exclusive content, which varies from week to week, month to month. If you can't afford to become a paid subscriber, but you'd like to support the podcast, I totally understand. Share the podcast, share the newsletter with friends. That helps build the audience, helps grow Decoding Fox News community. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And finally, another way you can support is I have an Amazon gift list. I just updated it because Thor broke a ring light. Thor is a cat, and he's tiny but mighty and an adorable tuxedo, but he is very destructive. I named him perfectly. I named him Thor because he was small, and I thought it would be funny to name a little tiny cat Thor. He was undersized. He's still undersized for an adult male. And I always wanted to name a cat Thor. And so, it's perfect. I named this little terror. He is very lovable, very sweet, very affectionate, but he destroys everything. And so I had to put a ring light. I got one with a clamp. I'm hoping that will prevent him from breaking it. I'll clamp it to the desk, and that way he can't knock it over because Anyway, how Fox News covered the South Carolina Republican primary. So this podcast is going to focus on the 2-hour special where they broke it down with their experts. Weirdly, they were in New York instead of South Carolina, which was kind of odd. They had people in South Carolina, and then they sent Fox and Friends Weekend to South Carolina, but we'll be discussing that a little bit in the weekly podcast. There's going to be a little bit of overlap here. This is intense. Election year is intense. So anyway, Fox News loves a Republican primary. The network turns primaries and caucuses into all-day affairs, with programming starting at 6 a.m. with the host of Fox and Friends smiling in casual clothing as a marching band blasts songs after every commercial break. Donald J. Trump's victory in the South Carolina Republican primary was a foregone conclusion. Most polls predicted Trump would beat Nikki Haley by 30 points. The fact that Trump only beat Haley by 20 points was never once mentioned during the 2-hour primary night special. 20 points is an enormous win, but it was another recent example of pollsters predicting rosier outcomes for Trump and other Republican candidates. Interesting. Nobody mentions this. I'm like, hi, Democrats are talking about this, but the Republicans they just gloss right over the fact that every poll in recent history has been way off, and as always predicted, they would have a better time of it, and then the actual election happens, and Democrats are like, yay, party. Anyway, instead of solely focusing on the entirely predictable horse race between two candidates, Fox News producers decided to weave in segments about a recent crime story and the border crisis to promote the xenophobic narrative of dangerous migrants invading the United States. This was the first time I saw them do that. They just said, we're not going to talk about this stupid primary because nobody cares, so we're going to just push our regular stuff. So this started at 7 p.m. The co-hosts were Martha McCallum and Brett Baer. The correspondents were Alexandra Hoff. She was at Trump headquarters, Mark Meredith at Haley headquarters, and then they had Bill Hemmer in studio doing his big board stuff. I'm just kind of joking about the big board. That's a Dr. Strangelove reference. It's an old movie. Most of my listeners are older than me, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But for the young ones, if you don't know this movie, Dr. Strangelove, 1964, black and white film, absolute masterpiece, dark, dark satire. Please watch it. It will change your life. You'll love it. It's dark, but funny, but dark, but funny. You'll quote it for the rest of your life. So anyway, here we go. The first segment, they pretty much like open and they're like, Trump won, and then we are subjected to this. And I've reduced this 25-minute rambling nonsense to 2 minutes.
Something going on in the country. Some really great things are going on. You look outside and you see all of the horror. You have terrorists coming in. You have people coming in that we just can't do. Could sustain what's happening to the United States of America. No, ever. There's never been a spirit like this. And I just want to say that I have never seen the Republican Party so unified as it is right now. I call up Lindsey Graham and he straightens it out so fast. And I'll tell you, no, remember. I love him. He's a good man. Come up here, Lindsey. Your South Carolina GOP chair, Drew McKissick. Thank you. Thank you. We have a highly opinionated group of people. I'll tell you, they turned very positive on you very quickly, Lindsey.
I just want to point out I did not alter this audio in any way. I didn't stretch out the booing. That is legitimately how long they booed. And that is the exact order of the speech. Now, the full speech is like 25 minutes long. But I took, Trump did say the party's never been more unified. Then a little bit later, he introduces Senator Lindsey Graham. He gets that reaction. And then further in the speech, he introduces Republican Party Chair of South Carolina, Drew McKissick, and he gets that reaction. So I think it speaks for itself there. That's kind of why I'm including this speech, because it was that moment, those two moments were alone worth sharing.
We appreciate it very much. What a job he's done in North Carolina. You know, that evening of 2020 with those votes coming in, we're leading in Pennsylvania, and all of a sudden, something happened. It went boom. And then we're leading all over the place, Georgia, and then boom. And we're leading. But North Carolina, I said, when is that going to go? When are they going to drop lots of ballots into that one? I just wish we could do it quicker, Mr. Governor. Is there anything you can do with your vast powers to make that, in certain countries, you're allowed to call your election date. If I had the right to do it, I'd do it tomorrow. We used to have election night. Now we have election period because some of these elections go on for 48 days, 61 days. Then they get all this equipment, and they'll be announcing the vote in 3 weeks from now. Can you imagine?
So, of course, the rest of the speech was his usual shtick of lying about his accomplishments, boasting about things he hadn't done, exaggerations, making promises he can't keep, saying stuff that's just blatantly false about like NATO funding and the oil and gas industry, which is not nationalized. He makes these wild, baseless claims about a number of things. But I did want to include that because he basically, I wanted to show how he promoted the idea that the election was stolen, then just seconds later goes, hey, governor, can you change? He's kidding, sort of. But he says, can you, with your vast powers, change the election to tomorrow? Because I want to just get it over with and win now. Okay, that's interesting. So the election against me was rigged, but can we rig it so I win it this time, basically, is what he's saying. So way to go there, Trump. Now we move on to Sandra Smith and another big board, which is she goes into the Fox News voter analysis, which, again, they always call it with the official term. They're very, very proud of it. I have a hyperlink if you want to see where they explain it at length and how they're working with the University of Chicago and the AP, Associated Press, on this, survey that they're very, very proud of.
Where Trump was strongest with voters on the ground there, the MAGA voters, the Make America Great Again followers, 87% of them supported Donald Trump. The very conservatives, 84% support Trump. Among the rural residents there, they give him 75%, 72% of white evangelical voters, and 71% without college degrees went for Donald Trump as president. For the record, by the way, Nikki Haley does have lower support in each of those areas except for mental capacity. She does edge out Donald Trump by a couple points there. She got 76% who believe she has the mental capacity to serve. One of our top findings does show a bit of weakness for Trump, though, and it was this question we put to voters about whether or not he is too extreme to win in the general election. More than 1/4 of GOP primary voters say he is too extreme to win in November. That's about twice as many as feel that way about Nikki Haley. And finally, you have to wonder if all those Nikki Haley voters will go on to support Donald Trump in November if he does indeed become the eventual nominee. So here's the findings. When we asked, 39% say they'll stay with the GOP nominee. But look at that number. 59% who are supporting Nikki Haley say they will not go on to support Donald Trump in the general election. That's among Republican primary voters.
Now, this next section I have to describe to you because I don't really have an audio version to show you. It's a visual thing. So as Smith was going through her data, oddly, she did not bring up the fact that most of the polling was about 10 points off. It was more favorable to Trump. Most polls predicted he would win by 30 points or more, and he won by about 20 points. She didn't bring this up. Nobody brought this up. So she shows this screen on her touch screen as part of the Fox News voter analysis, and it says percentage of voters saying Trump did nothing wrong regarding. And this is in regards to his criminal indictments. And the first one says January 6th. What do you think about that case? 56% of, again, Republican primary voters said they didn't think Trump did anything wrong. So the 2020 vote count, 53% said they didn't think Trump did anything wrong. And then possessing classified documents, only 44% said Trump did nothing wrong. Now, these aren't great numbers, considering these are Republican primary voters. This is sort of the heart, the hardcore, the diehard Republicans. Most people don't vote in primaries. So the only people who vote in primaries tend to be the people who are the most motivated. And he's eking out barely slim majorities for the January 6th case, for the 2020 vote count, and then he can't even get a majority for the possessing of classified documents. Those aren't good numbers. And if you ask the general voting population, you'd probably get much, much lower numbers. So I thought that was interesting that they even showed that on the screen. She glossed over it as, well, this looks great. I'm like, no, it doesn't. So anyway, after that little section, we move on to the first panel, which includes Dana Perino, former White House press secretary, also at Fox News, Kellyanne Conway, former senior counsel for President Trump, also at Fox News, Jessica Tarloff, the liberal from the Five, Paul Murrow, a former NYPD inspector, Trey Gowdy, former congressperson from South Carolina, also of Fox News, and then Brit Hume of Fox News. And this is going to start with Trey Gowdy and move into Jessica Tarloff.
As for Nikki Haley, having a strategy where you wait for your opponent to catch a bad cold or a good conviction is not going to be a winning strategy. And that is the only explanation for why she would stay in is some health calamity or hoping he gets convicted. And I don't think either are going to happen.
Yeah. The big election is November 5th, and that's what Democrats are certainly focused on, and independents. And 59% of Nikki Haley's voters say they won't support him in the general election if he's the Republican nominee. That mirrors what we have been seeing in Iowa and New Hampshire, and that's really what he needs to work on. So the other thing was hearing from people who live in South Carolina in blue epicenters and the Charlestons, and talking about the Nikki Haley ads and the content. And they were all about how she's going to beat Joe Biden. And guess what? Democrats don't want to hear that. If they are even open to conversion, if they are even disaffected Democrats, they want to be talking about beating Donald Trump at this moment. And then she would have, from the day that she becomes the nominee until Election Day, to convert them.
I thought that was really incredible insight by Jessica Tarloff, because I don't think I've heard that expressed in the same way pretty much anywhere. But she's basically saying if Nikki Haley is trying to appeal to disaffected Democrats, promoting herself as the only person who can beat Joe Biden is the wrong way to do it, because Democrats are really more concerned about just stopping Donald J. Trump, and it's fairly obvious right now that he's going to be the nominee. So Nikki Haley might want to pivot or change that type of messaging. I'm not sure what her plans are. We're going to get into that in the podcast. They kind of go all over the place in this one. The program took on a very odd turn, and I don't know if I've ever seen this before, but we're in a very odd year in that we've never had a candidate lose an election for president and then turn around and run again. We've also never had a president, never in the history of this country, lose an election and then spend an inordinate amount of time and energy claiming he didn't lose the election. That's never happened, with this constant drumbeat of I didn't lose, I didn't lose, I didn't lose. So anyway, Fox was trying to mix it up. So instead of just talking about, this election that just happened, they weaved in their number one topic for, again, Republican voters, which was immigration. And this starts with Bill Hemmer bringing it up, and then it snowballs from there.
Immigration. In 2016, in South Carolina, the economy was by far and away the number one issue in South Carolina. Immigration checked in at 10%. This year's at 50%. So all these stories we've been doing down on the border, Bill Maloogian and Griff Jenkins and all our teams down there for the past 3 years, and you think about the story that broke in Athens, Georgia over the past couple of days, don't think that that's not on the minds of people in South Carolina as they were talking to us over the past week down there.
And that was clearly something that the former president emphasized when he came out tonight. He knows that the concern that he expressed way back in 2015 when he came down the escalator about immigration is now an even more potent issue across this country, and we see it in all the polling.
You wonder why this is a big issue? You wonder why it really irks people about this? These stories we've been doing for years along the border. Bill's been down there. He essentially has a condo on the border, I think. But, I mean, he's been covering this since the beginning. And that's why people are so PO'd.
Now, as I'm watching this, and it's even in the language that Hemmer uses when he discusses this, he says, we've been pushing this. We've been reporting on this. We've made this a primary story. And I thought to myself, now we do have a border crisis. That is indisputable. There are more immigrants coming into this country now than we've ever had before in recent history. And it is a problem, 100%. But the fact that he says, I just thought to myself, are voters upset about this because it's actually affecting their daily lives? Is this their lived experience? Or is this because when they turn on their favorite news program, this is shoved down their throats? Is this Fox making the news or is this Fox reporting the news? It's hard to say because Fox does hype this up to, it's an evergreen story. If there were 5 migrants crossing the border every day, they would act as if it was an invasion. It doesn't matter. They shift the goalposts constantly, and it's always we're being invaded. They're taking over. This is somehow, military-aged men. We're going to get to that in the next podcast because I've got a clip on that. But this idea that this is somehow this sinister plot, it's not just, because migration's happening all over the world. Europe has been hit as things have happened in the Middle East and Africa, and people are desperate and they're fleeing to Europe. And Europe has been dealing with this for years. This is not just happening in the United States. So this idea that is Fox making the news or is Fox reporting the news? It's kind of a gray area. Fox also oddly cut to a story about a woman who was murdered in Athens, Georgia. The man who murdered her is an immigrant. His exact status is sort of debatable. They're not sure yet exactly. Now, this has been widely reported on the network already. So I'm not sure why they had to do a breaking story about something they'd already broken, and that they knew the guy was an immigrant. They had been repeating that story the entire morning over and over again on Fox and Friends. They had repeated it earlier in the week. So it's not a breaking story. It was just a way to remind their audience of this woman got killed, an immigrant killed her, run for your lives. And then they cut to, also in this segment, a short segment with Bill Maloogian down in San Diego, because now Texas, because of the razor wire and other steps Texas has taken, more of the immigration has shifted to Arizona and California. So he goes to an area where people are coming off a bus in San Diego, and he's just interviewing people like, where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? Very odd segment. Again, to whip up fear and paranoia about the border. And so we move from that. So they include these two little short news segments, and then they move into the next panel, which is Juan Williams of Fox News, Dana Perino, former White House press secretary again of Fox News, Kayleigh McEnany, another former White House press secretary for Trump, also Fox News, and then Paul Murrow again. And we're going to go right into, we're going to repeat again the story about the woman who was killed in Athens, Georgia.
You know, this horrific crime that happened in Georgia, I believe we are going to be hearing about this case throughout the course of this election. This young woman could be anyone's daughter. She is dead at the hands of this person from Venezuela who's in the country illegally.
Let's move beyond that to recognize that there does appear, particularly from Venezuela, there does seem to be an effort to empty out the prisons and the insane asylums, just like we had in 1980, and bring them here. But what you also have is the Soros prosecutors, for lack of a better term. And all of these things are coming together in a place like New York, Chicago, San Francisco, et cetera, where there are mechanisms to prosecute this stuff and to keep these people inside. Doesn't exist. And I don't have to speculate. We saw it here with those Venezuelan gang members who attacked the police in Times Square.
So that was Paul Murrow. And again, they were repeating this throughout Fox and Friends weekend. I watched all 4 hours because when they do a primary, Fox and Friends tends to really whip it up. And it was because it was on a Saturday. I got the weekend crew, which was weird, but that'll be included in the next podcast. But anyway, Paul Murrow makes a bunch of assumptions about Venezuela with no evidence. Does he offer any evidence? Does he say it's been documented, or we know for a fact, or the government has looked into this? No. He just says they're emptying out their prisons. They're emptying out their insane asylums, using the exact same language that Trump has just used. Did he back any of that up? Did Trump back any of that up? Of course not. You're just going to make a statement and let it sit there. Classic Fox News. Next, we move on to Dana Perino talking about a Republican political consultant.
Chris LaCivita works for President Trump. He's a great presidential campaign genius when it comes to ads. He did the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth ads in 2004, which really helped George W. Bush become in a very close election with John Kerry. And do you think that Chris LaCivita will not be able to take all of the video that we have seen about these migrants and destroy Joe Biden's messaging?
It's making its own campaign ads every day for their team, for sure.
And again, they're saying, oh, we're going to make these ads make themselves when we terrorize and scare the heck out of everybody over immigration. Again, I'm repeating myself, but immigration is the number one concern for Republican voters. They're not going to vote for Biden anyway. Republican voters, not independents, not swing voters, not, disaffected Democrats, Republicans. That is their number one topic, immigration. It's not for the rest of the country. So that's kind of interesting. Then we move on to the third panel, which includes Karl Rove, a Republican political consultant, Harold Ford Jr. of Fox News. He's a moderate, and Britt Hume. And we're going to go right back into this Chris LaCivita, who, again, if you are old enough to remember the Swift Boat ads, they were absolutely devastating to John Kerry when he ran for president.
To me, looking at these numbers, the exit polls, and also looking at the numbers as they come in from these counties, we have two Republican parties here. We've got a Republican Party that is MAGA-oriented, dominated by Donald Trump, and a party that's not. And in the state of South Carolina, it's about a 60-40 split, and they're not happy with each other. The exit polling showing that a significant number of Nikki Haley voters say at this point they won't be voting for Donald Trump. Now, granted, that's today, and as we get closer to the fall election, that's likely to diminish. But it's incumbent upon the winner to do everything he can to unite the party. And while Donald Trump did a good job tonight of acknowledging all the people that helped him win, he did not much of a job at all of trying to unite the party, of complimenting the opposition, of saying it's time to come together, of trying to set a positive tone. And even his rally demonstrated some of the tensions inside the party. He introduced Lindsey Graham, who was booed, introduced the Republican state chairman, who was booed. Our party, the Republican Party, is pretty broken right now, and it's going to take a lot of time and energy and leadership to pull it back together.
But Carl,
because remember, last time around, Donald Trump took 90% of the Republicans and a minority of the independents and was behind by 7 million votes. So he's got to do better than he did last time. And the idea, I don't know if you saw it today, but I mean, his press secretary took a 2x4 to Nikki Haley. Chris LaCivita, who's a friend of mine and whom I have enormous respect for, said that they were going to give her an ass kicking in South Carolina. This is not the language of unity. This is not the gracious winner, the guy who's out in front and winning 60-40 in her home state. This is like, the kind of stuff, the taunts you hear at junior high football games. I mean, there's a moment where you need to begin uniting the party, and we didn't see it tonight.
So that clip and the odd choices to insert news stories about the border and this murder in Athens, Georgia, were why I decided to go ahead and make this into a podcast. Because I was going to just do a newsletter for paid subscribers and move on. And I thought, no, there's more here to this. And I think that's why the Twitter thread performed as well as it did. Because there's something about the fact that Karl Rove, who's as dyed-in-the-wool a Republican as he could possibly be, he was, the right-hand man in some ways to George W. Bush. This is, this is all he does, is obsess about, Republican politics. And he's saying we've got a serious problem here. The fact that he's, Trump is not doing as well as he should be doing. The fact that these voters don't like him. The fact that he keeps attacking Nikki Haley in the way that he does. The fact that his people don't seem to understand that they need to rally the troops. They're just happy that they're winning. They go to these rallies where you get his diehard fans who cheer him on, and they're being blinded by the fact that he really isn't as popular as he was. And I want to point this out in the next clip that gets even crazier, is that if Karl Rove, someone who's this pro-Republican Party, is saying this is not MSNBC. This is, not Rachel Maddow, Chris Hayes. It's not someone who's on I love both of them, by the way, but people who are on a, partisan network who are saying, rosy things about the election. This is Karl Rove saying, danger, danger, we got a problem here. And you're not going to hear it on Hannity. You're not going to hear it on the Ingram Angle or Jesse Waters. Are you kidding? No, you're not going to hear it on any of those shows. You're not going to hear it on The Five or Fox and Friends. No, they're just going to be like, everybody loves Trump, 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 go Trump, go Trump. Especially now that he's pretty much the only candidate they have left. Nikki Haley's holding in there. But, if this is a problem now, this gives me hope with all of the negative press that they throw around and against stupid stories about Commander the dog and the other nonsense that's going out there. So I don't think we should get complacent, though, by any means. This is a battle for our democracy. Donald J. Trump is not kidding around. Everything about this man is terrifying to me if he gets into power again. So Fox then included Nikki Haley's speech to her supporters, which apparently was about a half hour long, but they cut her off at about 13 and a half minutes. I point that out because they're always bragging that they show everything and, we don't cut people off like these other now. Yes, you do. They do it all the time. They just don't cut Trump off. So she gives a speech. I have a hyperlink to it in the newsletter. And then John Roberts comes on and is deeply concerned about pretty much everything.
That she is determined to stay in this, whether it's a contingency plan, as Brett was saying, break glass in case of emergency, if Trump were somehow to falter, or if she's going down a different road. We can't tell at this point, but she is determined to hang in. I think, and Karl Rove mentioned this, and Sandra Smith mentioned this in the Fox News voter analysis, the real key here is this 59% of Haley voters who say that they would not vote for Donald Trump should he become the nominee. That tracks with about 24% of the Republican Party, which is right along the lines of what that New York Times Siena poll showed us almost a year ago now, in terms of the makeup of the Republican Party, in which there was about 25% of Republicans who say that they are never Trumpers. And I know that there are a large number of establishment Republicans who are anti-Trump, who would like to see Nikki Haley become a, quote, part of the resistance. Now, it also could be said that, this is just part of the regular primary schedule. Don't forget, in 2016, it was a knockdown, drag-em-out, bare-knuckle fight between then President Trump, candidate Trump rather, and Ted Cruz that went all the way until May the 3rd. And the things that were said back and forth, you thought you could never, ever take them back. But in the end, Cruz got behind Trump. Trump probably became a stronger candidate because of it and went on to win the election.
So then we move on to a segment that I was calling, basically, people wanted me to do this, so I'm going to do it. Will Nikki Haley go rogue? And that's basically what this is. And it's a bunch of Fox News folks. Yeah, that was a specific request. Somebody made that specific request on Twitter, and so I did it for you. I get that from professional wrestling, by the way. My brothers were huge fans. I'm from Missouri. My dad was an auto mechanic. That's who I am. Okay, so I know way too much about professional wrestling. I'm going to move on. But the final panel was Dana Perino, Juan Williams of Fox News, Kayleigh McEnany, and Ari Fleischer. Ari Fleischer was a former White House press secretary for George W. Bush. And this gets a little spicy at the end here. A little spicy.
Interestingly, Super Tuesday, 11 of the 15 states, you don't have to be a registered Republican to vote. So she could be playing for the Independents, Democrats, and see how that plays if she gets 40% or so in those states. But there's a lot to chew over here.
Yeah, there's a lot she didn't say in that speech that has opened the doors to people thinking that perhaps she's considering a third-party run. And when I spoke with her the other day, she said, I'm running as a Republican right now.
Right now.
So now Ari Fleischer, when he finally gets the mic, and this is like the first time we've seen him for the entire evening, which I don't know why Fox does that, but that's what they do. So they recycle people and they bring new people on, and he just goes right off the gate, like bam.
That was a no-labels speech tonight by Nikki Haley. That was a speech when she says, no matter what, I am running. When she trashes Joe Biden, trashes Donald Trump, she is setting herself up to run down the middle.
Guess who's the most worried about this tonight? It's not Donald Trump, for the reason that Kayleigh just said. It's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Because remember what Nikki Haley has said all along, that this election, I'm not running against Biden, I'm running against Kamala Harris. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to diagram all of these sentences to see what clues we can find. But she gave clues to both of you this week in interviews, so probably more to come. When I said she can't get media attention, I might be wrong, because if you decide to do something new on the runway, that's how you get news.
So yes, drama and intrigue now. Will Nikki Haley go rogue? Will Nikki Haley go rogue? Again, picture me in a ring. Picture two of my brothers. I have one that's older, one that's younger. We're very close in age. Deciding I'm just going to be body slammed, because that was pretty much my childhood. That and pile drivers and all that nonsense. My older brother, both of them would like reenact it too. This is the family I come from. So I'd just be sitting there and I'd just hear, he's not going to take it anymore. He sees her. He knows his time has come. It's a challenge that he can only meet. And it'll be like, Ric Flair deciding. And then he would like name me as like a Von Erich brother or something. And I'd be like, oh no, here we go. And I would hear my brother like come up behind me and I'm like, here we go. And then I'd be like, bam. And there's only a couple times that someone was concerned that I was actually hurt. Then my brother would be like, uh-oh, I went too far. I've actually hurt my sister. And I'd be like, I'm good. And it's funny because I make jokes about this all the time, that I have like the reflexes of someone with two brothers, in that I don't flinch. Like, you can try to, people try to like, boo. I just look at them and go, what? I grew up with two brothers. You have no idea. I was sandwiched in between them. And my sister is older than me. It goes like this. My brother, my sister, me, my little brother. And my mother had us in the span of 4 years. So go Catholics. Irish twins. Irish twins are two babies born within a year of each other. Technically, it's supposed to be 12 months, but we're like 13. So I'm counting it, okay? I'm counting it. That was a lot of crazy. So, and I'm going on a tangent. So that's the podcast. Again, the weekly regular podcast is coming. I'm still working on it. That should be published is probably within the next 24 hours. I just felt like I had to get this one out first because it was like 90% written. Because as I was going through the quotes, I was putting it together because it was meant to just be a newsletter. And I was like, no, this is a podcast. This is a podcast. And I'll very briefly, just because it's like your fix. And I feel like I will get angry notes if I don't do it. I'll very quickly. You know who I'm doing. I'm Judge Jeanine. And I'm just mad that I wasn't asked to be on the panel. If you need someone to give their opinion about Joe Biden and Nikki Haley, what is she thinking? She looks nice in her little outfit. She's got great shoes. But come on, lady, you're not going to win. You're not going to win. You should sit down. Sit down and run again some other time. You lost in your own state. You're humiliated. And I need a drink. I shouldn't say that. I don't know. Should I? She was talking about poop last week. It's true, she was. Just talking. I'll play it. It's an audio. I got an audio for you. We're playing it.
The rats can come out. They can poop in the sewer, and more rats will come out.
I mean, I should just play that clip to get excited for each new podcast. They can poop in the sewer. You know, just get it out of me. Just go. It's like, I'm tired. I don't want to do it. No, listen to Judge Jeanine. Okay, so if you want to know more about Decoding Fox News, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, although Blue Sky doesn't let me post video yet, so don't post that much on there. But you can find me there. You can also find me on Instagram for Decoding Fox News. The comment section is always amusing. TikTok, which I hate, but, gotta do it. But I'm on TikTok. I'm on YouTube and Facebook under my own name, Juliette Jeske. Juliette spelled like Romeo and 1 T, so it's just Julie with a T at the end. Jeske spelled Jeske. I also want to give a quick shout out from the mascots of the podcast, Odin and Thor. They are cats. Odin was making noise for no reason, and I had to stop because he's being a weirdo. You're being a weirdo. He's a giant, long, skinny black cat with an incredibly long tail. Stop doing that, Odin. Anyway, I will see you at the next podcast.
Resolute Square.